Hi guys, Ed Donaldson here, just meeting you at the outside gates of the property, opening up there for us. Going to head through and have a little bit of a look around the property, take you for a bit of a tour. I'll poke my nose into the winery and we'll head over to the vineyard if we get a chance. So gates are open, we'll see you in there. So we're at the entrance to the winery here. We're just heading down the entryway path down into the cellar door and into the winery itself. Got some quite extensive grounds and gardens which I'll take you for a brief tour of shortly. These are some fig trees. We've got about 6 different strains of fig. They're just at the end of the season at the moment, still got the bird nets on. There's just a few figs hanging in the last few trees there. We've got some olives up the back there, and then we've got a lot of stone fruit, berries, artichokes, parsimon, horseradish, and plenty of other bits and pieces as well. There's a wee garden around this side here too, which has got a lot of produce that we grow too. But we're heading into the winery. It's beautiful old doors made of kauri, which is a native New Zealand timber. Coming into what was the restaurant, but we've recently turned into an event space. So we'll be holding private events, but also we'll be putting on a number of events ourselves here. Got lots of good memories here. Lots of bottles from all over the place that the family have enjoyed over the years. On the cold days we have a nice big open fire cranking there. We have contemporary art on the walls from some different artists, all New Zealand contemporary artists. Some chandeliers there, which are old Burgundian antique drying racks that we've repurposed into chandeliers. More bottles, more memories. I'll take you through out into the garden shortly, but I'll just head through into the cellar door. Yeah, this is our cellar door space. We're actually doing seated tastings in the restaurant at the moment, just because of the whole COVID thing. We have to seat our customers, but under normal circumstances, this room here is our cellar door space. Use a lot of recycled remu, which is a native New Zealand timber as well. This is what the floor and a lot of the bar and a lot of the woodwork around the building is made from. So a picture at the end there from a very sort of well-known New Zealand artist called Heather Stryker. It's an image which she asked if we'd be interested in doing a collaboration, and you'll notice the bottles there. She's actually making one into a Molotov cocktail, which my father wasn't very impressed about, but there you go. Anyway, we'll head through into the belly of the beast. We'll head into the winery now. So we've just come through to clearly the barrel hall here. So this is all of our reds. So the predominantly Pinot Noir, but also some components of the Red Bordeaux blend. So Merlot, Cab Sauv, Malbec, and Cab Franc. But a good number of these barrels, at least, well over half, probably 2/3, are a Pinot Noir. As you can see, they're predominantly these the 225 litre French oak barriques. In here, usually a stack of about 6 barrels, although it could range between sort of 6 or possibly up to 12 barrels, different batches of Pinot Noir. So when we harvest the Pinot, it comes in, all the different blocks, all the different clones come in individually, and then we process them all individually. We might have, even for the same blocks, we might have different lengths of skin contact. We might have different amounts of whole bunch. They might be different parts of the vineyard that are harvested at different times, and we keep them all completely separately. They might be aged in different brands of French oak. They might be aged in different ages of French oak barriques. We generally don't go more than about 30% new. And so, we keep all of these components separate, and then we taste and go through what we call our sort of final blend process, which happens just before the wines are bottled after usually between 18 and 22 months in barrel. So it usually takes somewhere between maybe a month and 6 weeks of tasting trials. So all of the components are all from the same vineyard. They're all single vineyard. But rather than putting everything together earlier on, we keep everything separate, and we think we've got a lot more control over the final product by keeping everything separate. We think we can make a much more balanced and sort of complete wine and more complex wine by using a lot of different components, and then, as I say, doing that final blend just at the end. Got, just looking through the tasting room there, we've got some larger, older barrels here too. There's some Slovenian oak, and there's actually some Romanian oak, believe it or not, there as well. We only have just a few of these bigger, older barrels, which have some of the small components. Usually are the red Bordeaux blends that go in those barrels. So we'll just poke our nose through here. We're just going through into the fermentation hall. So here we are through in the fermentation hall. This was actually the original part of the building. We built the building over about 15 years, and this was the first stage here. Mum and Dad were sort of from the old school and wanted to do everything without borrowing lots of money and getting into debt. So we sort of built the place slowly over the years as we could afford it. In here, as you can see, there's a lot of tanks of varying sizes, but pretty much all sort of medium to small tanks. As I was talking about with the Pinot Noir next door, we do the same, perhaps not with quite so many different components, but we do the same in terms of having a number of different components with all the varieties that we make. So the likes of Riesling, we might have 4 or 5 different batches. It might be from different parts of the vineyard. It might be that different harvesting date, different levels of ripeness, different amounts of botrytis, that sort of thing. And then they're tasted and sort of assessed and blended just before bottle. So as you can see, lots of small tanks. I'm going to walk you through here. There's actually not a lot to see in this room at the moment. About a week ago, we were right in the midst of a vintage, and or not in the midst of vintage, but it wrapped up a week ago. But in the midst of vintage, this room's sort of filled with bubbling Pinot ferments. So this is our sort of fermentation hall for the Pinot during vintage. You can see there's a lot of small tanks here as well. A lot of our late harvest sweet wines are made in here. We have quite a number of getting down to really tiny tanks down this end. These are our wines like Finale, Aria, Encore are made and stored in these tanks. Sorry, the lighting's not very good in here. You can see there's some. I've got some Burgundian fermenters here as well. And I've got, they're used to fermenting over vintage, and then we've put a floating lid or a variable capacity lid so that they can, we can use them to store wine in throughout the year as well, so they're not just in use during vintage. So finally, we do all our own bottling on site. Just bear with me here, and I'll just wander down to the bottling line. It's actually a weekend, so there's not a lot happening today in the winery, but we do all our own bottling on site. We always have. This is an Italian machine that we bought about 5 years ago, and great machine. So we're doing everything from, we used to have a really an old machine that was very, very labour intensive. It took about 12 people to operate it, including the labeller, but this is a much more streamlined, nice machine to use. So as I say, sort of got full control of growing the grapes on the site here, obviously all being made here, and then being bottled and labelled and stored here as well. We do all of the wines get a minimum of a year in bottle before release, all the Pegasus Bay wines, and some wines get 2 years. So this is a mad scientist control board. My brother is a bit of a mad scientist, and I think this probably part of the winery. This board shows that more than anything. I have not a clue what any of that means, but Matt will know what every single doodle or scribble means. Also has a love for strange taxidermy. So this is our cellar. We just keep a lot of older stock in here for tastings and the like. This is separate to our warehouse, which obviously we keep our main stock in, but this is all sort of our family library wine that we, as I say, we use for vertical tastings, and we're offering older vintages in our restaurant, which we'll certainly be doing for events as well. No shortage of tasty older treats here. This is the Belcantos and Arias, some Pinot, Malbec, bit of Syrah in here, and then we've got some large formats in the back here. As I say, these are all older vintage of large formats. Then we've got some Prima Donnas down here. Right, we'll head out to the garden. See you out there. So these are our toilets. Normally wouldn't really be a point of interest, but I thought I'd just show you a few of the quotes in here. Hi. Actually, my favourite one, I think, is here in the male cubicles. There it is, a Dean Martin quote. You're not drunk if you can lie on the floor without holding on. Love it. Anyway, we'll see you out in the garden. Alright, here we are out in the gardens, just looking back at the winery complex there. The wee apartment at the top there. So this is, when we moved in here, this was just a dry, flat paddock, and I'll show you down the bottom there. There's some, move a bit closer, some lakes down here, which when we moved in, this was just a swamp basically. And my mother and our sidekick gardener Paula have planted every tree on the property. Here we've got about 15 acres of garden around the winery, lots of little walkways. The only trees that were here, sorry, it's probably making me feel dizzy with me spinning like that, are those tall pine trees behind there. They're about 100 and something years old, 120 years old. So they were here when we bought the property, but as I say, every other tree my mother has planted. I'll just turn the camera around here so you can see this part of the garden. So as you can see, we're deep in autumn at the moment. Deep in autumn, a lot of the, not too many, or fall as you call it, not a lot of leaves left on the trees there. All the leaves that are there are pretty well golden. And this is what was an outdoor dining space for the restaurant. But we'll be, as I say, we'll be using this as a space for our events. Old sausage dog in the background there. Got some happy little ducks on the lake there. Got a swan somewhere, hiding at the moment. Alright, I'll head over to the vineyard. Head over to the vineyard now, and we'll take a look over there. So this is a organic compost that we apply in the vineyard. It's made from grape marc, so all the seeds and the skins are the main component of the compost. Just behind here you can see those small trees. In the background there we've got around 200 are planted, which are oak and pine nut trees, which all have been impregnated with truffle spores. So the bianchetto, the perigold and the summer truffle, the burgundy truffle. We've got the three types of spores there. Hopefully next year we should, in theory, start getting our first truffles. We were told any time from sort of last year through to sort of next year, or possibly the year after, we should be able to start harvesting. Hi guys, well, we're over in the Pegasus Bay Vineyard now. This is a block, our original plantings. It's just planted from cuttings back when I was around 10 years old. Which wasn't yesterday, as you can see. So these vines are getting up around 35, well they are 35 years old now, all, as I say, all ungrafted. This is the block we planted, as I say, when we first moved in here, just from cuttings, and has a pretty wide spread of different varietals. So there's Pinot Noir, there's 3 or 4 different clones of Pinot Noir. Then Chardonnay, some red Bordeaux varietals, Merlot, Cab Sav, Cab Franc and Malbec, as well as Sauvignon and Semillon. You can see those hills behind there. Those hills there are what's known as the Teviotdale range, and that's quite an important geographical feature of the region here. Basically, that over the hills there is Pegasus Bay itself, as the coast, and so those hills just give us really good shelter from the easterly, and that's the main reason that most people in Canterbury have planted up here in North Canterbury in the Waipara Valley. Easterly is a very cold wind that comes off the Pacific Ocean. And as I say, we're tucked in under the lee of the Teviotdale range here, and that was one of the things that drew my father to this site. This particular block here is what we call a terrace block. There's a terrace that runs all the way through it diagonally from one end to the other. As you can see, we're sort of just in the midst of pruning at the moment. Oh, there's a lovely wee fantail, one of our native birds. As I say, we're just in the midst of pruning, so we use VSP or vertical shoot positioning for pretty much everything. We do a portion in Scott Henry where we split the top canes up and the bottom canes down, and we do that with just some of our red Bordeaux varietals. I'll take you for a look at another part of the vineyard. We'll see you over there. Hi guys, so we're over here in what we call our river block. The vineyard here borders, it's got the river on two sides of the vineyard, borders two sides of the vineyard. So we're on an area here, our home vineyard's planted on what's called the Glasnevin Gravels, and it's basically where the river has washed down over sort of hundreds of thousands of years, and sort of the path has changed its forward, sort of new paths, and washed down all the gravels and the stones from the mountains. Runs for about 5 kilometres across the valley, and then around about 8 kilometres up into the main divide or into the Southern Alps. In this block here we have quite a number of different clones of Pinot Noir, so we have about 6 different clones in this part of the vineyard, as well as some other varieties, some Muscat, some Merlot, some Semillon as well. You can see those Teviotdale ranges just in the background there. You can also see, I'm not sure, I'll see if I can zoom in there. No, that's not letting me. Wind machines there in the background, the big windmills. We've got 2 in this block, we've got 4 in the centre block, and then another 3 over in our aromatics block. And we're right on the edge here in terms of, we're very prone to frost. You know, we specialise in cool climate, you know, wine styles, but we are very prone to frost, those spring frosts. So we have to monitor the frost very, very closely. We've got the wind machines. We also have frost pots that we put up under the wind machines just to raise the temperature if we need to. And we also have water that sprays over the coldest part of the vineyard as well. So we'll head through to the aromatics block. So just sort of take a little bit of a closer look at the sort of at the soil here. As you can see, we've got a lot of these stones, grey wacky stones. They were pretty much this whole 50-acre paddock was just covered with these stones, but just over the years they've been rolled down into the ground in between the rows. But as you can see, in the rows themselves, there's still a lot of the stones still here. So when my dad first started looking for a site in Canterbury, he wanted to find a site that was a little bit warmer than where he originally planted grapes. He originally planted grapes closer to Christchurch, a little hobby vineyard. But when he looked to plant Pegasus Bay, he wanted to find a site that was just a little bit warmer. Still, I mean, really the whole of New Zealand is considered a cool climate viticulturally, yeah, we're in Canterbury here, kind of a warm pocket in a cool climate. Obviously in the South Island, we're you know, we're cooler than overall than up in the North Island. So yeah, these stones reflect heat up into the canopy during the growing season, just increasing the warming the environment a little bit. And the other aspects are they're hugely free draining these soils because of the stones and the free draining nature of them. So what it means is that we do irrigate. We can give the vines just the optimum amount of water, just obviously not too much, but just enough. Enough to keep them healthy without creating sort of excess vigor, but also means in seasons that we have high rainfall, particularly later in the season, which thankfully doesn't happen that often here. But what it does mean, you know, if we're into autumn and the grapes are still hanging and we do get a heavy rain event, the rain does drain through the soils very quickly, and we tend to fare a lot better in these soils and vintages like that than in the clay-based soils, which are kind of more in the foothills. So as you see here, we're on a VSP, or vertical shoot positioning, which is more or less what the whole vineyard's in, with the exception of a block of Scott Henry, where we lift the top canopy up and the bottom canopy down. As you can see here, we've got 4 canes laid, and we do this on some varieties that are kind of susceptible around flowering. Often our weather can be a bit unsettled here in Canterbury around flowering, and so this is a bit of an insurance policy. We lay 4 canes down. If the flowering goes okay, then we cut off 2 of the canes. If the flowering doesn't go so well, if we get, you know, bad weather, rain or a heavy wind over flowering, then it just means that you know, we can still get a reasonable crop. A reasonable crop for us, for our Pinot, we're looking at about 2.2 tonnes per acre. So we're not looking at big yields. These vines are really low yielding. A lot of the time we're cropping a lot lower than that. It's just kind of what the vintage gives us, but certainly if it looks like we'll be getting anything more than 2.2 tonnes per acre, then we will cut off 2 of those canes. So this is our aromatics block. So the terrace block, which I first showed you, that was around 50 acres, and then about 30 acres each in the river block, and then here in the aromatics block. So in this block we have Muscat, there's a little bit of Semillon, but predominantly Riesling. We've got quite a lot of different clones of Riesling planted here. So Similar soils to the rest of the vineyard, those free draining Glasnevin gravels, a little bit of windblown loess, and as I say, a bit of silt and loam there as well, but predominantly those free draining river gravels. You can see some wind machines in the background there too. So this here's a little olive grove. It's about an acre of, there's about 6 different varieties of olives that my mother planted. We get a little bit of oil, and then we use some of the olives. We traditionally have used them in the restaurant. Just showing you the view from across the lake here. So we're just up on the other side. As you say, when we moved here, these lakes weren't formed, and this area down the bottom was just a swampy sort of brambly area. So there's actually a series of lakes. You can right back in the distance. You can't see them from where we're standing here, but there's 3 or 4 different lakes which go right through the property. There's a natural spring that starts just at the start of our property this way, and it just comes up underground and then feeds these lakes, which then flow down into the Waipara riverbed and then out to sea, out to Pegasus Bay. This is Mum's latest garden down here. Actually a lot of bonsai conifers up in a little walkway up there. But yeah, this is a little sort of Japanese inspired garden down here. And yeah, walkways going through to our lower lake here, around this side. Oh, and there's our resident swan. It's Swanston there. As I say, these are fed from the spring, just a little bit further up. A little bit of topiary going on. But yeah, lots of little walkways like this around the property. Hello again. So we've just taken a short drive from the Pegasus Bay vineyard to our Main Divide vineyard, Main Divide Teho vineyard. The name Teho is a bit of a nod to our Māori heritage. My great grandfather was full-blooded Māori on my father's side, and the name Teho means the wind, and it's come up in quite a few. My dad's traced the family tree back quite a few generations, and this name Teho is, as I say, popped up frequently. So, as I say, a bit of a nod to our Māori heritage. Main Divide is the name for our the mountain range that runs all the way down the South Island. It sort of forms the spine of the South Island. It divides the east coast from the west. We have come from that direction, so that's where the Pegasus Bay vineyard is. You can see the Teviotdale range there. The coast, we're facing the coast at the moment, and say the Pegasus Bay itself's just on the other side of those hills. And then the Main Divide vineyard is further inland. We're about 5 kilometres further inland, and we're just at the foothills of the Main Divide here. As I say, Main Divide runs all the way down the South Island and divides the east coast from the west coast. So we planted this vineyard about 10 years ago. Pretty much the idea was just to have a little bit more control over the fruit. So Main Divide traditionally has been a label we have for grapes that we buy from growers around our region, so all North Canterbury. But about 12 years ago, we purchased some land to plant our own vineyard for Main Divide. The idea being just to give a bit more control over the fruit. So we have a good mix of varietals in here. There's some Riesling, some Pinot Gris, a little bit of Chardonnay, and then around 4 different clones of Pinot Noir here. So thanks for joining me. Yep, really appreciate it. Hopefully you've learned something, and yeah, look forward to hopefully seeing you guys over here sometime, or me over in North America. Can't imagine it's going to be anytime really soon with everything going on, but yeah, hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later. All right, over and out. Cheers.